Hello, my name is Michelle Welch, and I'm the adult librarian at the Vermont Square Branch Library. This workshop is part of a series of programs we partner with SCORE to celebrate Small Business Month. SCORE is the nation's largest network of volunteer, expert business mentors and is dedicated to help small businesses to get off the ground, grow, and achieve their goals. SCORE is a nonprofit organization and is a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Today's SCORE workshop, Starting a Business, What You Need to Know, will be presented by Bob O'Brien and Dick Mader. Bob O'Brien was in the sales business for over 50 years. His formal education includes a BS in sales engineering and a master's degree in finance. He started as a sales engineer for a major electrical manufacturer and then a sales manager, and finally a regional sales manager before starting his own manufacturer's representation firm. This firm grew from a startup to sales of over 16 million a year. After 25 years running the company, Bob was able to sell the company to his employees. Bob was an active board member in the Electronic Rep Association, the ERA, where he was given a lifetime honorary membership. Bob has recently completed his term as a chairman for a nonprofit ERA educational trust. Along the way, Bob has trained successful salesmen and women from every type of background you can imagine. Bob's company has won numerous sales awards from the manufacturers they represented. Dick Mader started as a paperboy and never left the business. He owned and managed several newspaper distribution companies before moving to Los Angeles. In LA, he founded the largest media company west of the Mississippi that distributes domestic and foreign newspapers and magazines. This company is now run by his son. So I would like to introduce Bob and Dick with this presentation. Take it away, fellas.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I'm sorry. It's afternoon. Okay, today we're going to be talking about what you need to be thinking about in starting a business. Bob and I don't have all the answers, but we will be asking questions and giving you things to be thinking about as you think about starting a business. Slide. Today's workshop, we're going to talk about your ideas. We're going to talk a little bit about business plans and financial projections, legal structure, your name, licensing, intellectual property, financing, marketing. And we're going to also talk about 2 secrets that provide fortunes to 2 billionaires. We're also going to talk a little bit about managing and operating your business. And we will end up giving you some homework. Next slide. I'd like to talk, just before we get started, a little bit about why businesses fail. And, businesses fail for all kinds of reasons. And I kind of wanted to get this out of the way early so you don't get too discouraged by it. But it's things to think about it. And the reason we talk about it is so that you will know what to look for. And I will just go through a couple of these. One of the first ones is the inability to adapt to change, because as soon as you open your business, things start to change. The market will change, your customers will change, the products will change, the landscape will change. And your job as a business person is to adapt to those changes. A good example would be in our business distributing newspapers, magazines, and books. You can imagine that that's changed over the last few years. And my son is really charged with adapting to all the changes in the marketplace, bringing in different products, distributing them in different ways, because people are looking for things differently today. Another reason why a business might fail is because people are great technicians, but they neglect everything else. A good example of that would be a person that's designing jewelry. And maybe they love designing jewelry and they're great at it, they're very artistic, but they ignore some of the other things like the bookkeeping and marketing and keeping track of profits or costs and that sort of thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you really have to be good at not only doing the thing that you're passionate about and that you're technically great at, but you also have to be taking care of the other things, because those are important as well. Another thing why a business might fail is because of insufficient operating startup capital. Having a little money set aside and a good plan of how that money will be spent so that you don't run out of capital when things start to get good and then you can't buy inventory or you can't hire people at the right time. So really having a good business plan and making sure you have sufficient operating capital to get you through it. Next slide. Why do people start a business? We hear a lot of people that think, oh, it's easy work, that you work less hours, and that's really a myth. Some people say, well, I don't want to have a boss to report to, and that's also a myth, because you'll be reporting to your customers and your suppliers, and you have to remember that they are really in charge of making sure your business thrives, and you have to report to them. Some people think they can deduct everything as a tax deduction, and that's also a myth. You really got to be careful to make sure you do it right, because you don't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Probably the last thing people would say is, I get to decide what product to sell. That's also a myth, because you really have to look at what the customer wants, what the market is telling you to decide what product, how many, what color. The market will decide what you will sell. The most important part is to find a need in the marketplace and fill it, and then you will succeed. Slide. Is this easy? No, it's not. It could be a very trying and difficult time. So it's really important, like I mentioned before, to balance the passion that you have for your product or service with the wisdom of responding to the marketplace and managing that business. And you have to be realistic about your limitations, because you don't have all the talents. You either have to learn them or you have to hire them. But all the talents to operate a business have to be present for a business to be successful. Next slide. I'm going to start with something that somebody said. And who said this? Start with your customer and work backwards. This person says we are customer obsessed. Who said that? Next slide. By golly, it was Jeff Bezos. He's the founder and CEO of Amazon. But one of the reasons that Amazon is so successful is that they start with a customer on every decision they make. What does a customer want? What are they demanding? And then they work backwards to provide it, rather than trying to convince their customers to accept what they're offering. They start with the customer, and then they figure out how to make that happen. And worked out pretty good for Jeff. He's now the richest person on the planet. Next slide.
My name is Bob O'Brien, and I'm going to present the next part of our presentation. And I wanted to start at a few things that I think really will help your business be successful. The first thing that I suggest is you get experience in your chosen industry. When you go into business, there's tons of things you don't know. But if you know the basic way to operate the business that you're talking about, you're ahead of the plan. And if you work somewhere in your chosen industry, you can pick up all kinds of knowledge that'll help you, and somebody else is paying for your education. So it's a great way to get started in starting your own business. The second thing I strongly recommend is you write a business plan. And we'll talk about a couple of plans. And the third thing I recommend is that you find somebody to give you advice as you go along. All kinds of questions are going to crop up, and it's really helpful if you have somebody you can call and say, hey, what do I do about this? This person can be a family member who owns a business. It can be a friend who's in business. or it can be a SCORE mentor. We also provide that service. And finally, when you go into business, you have to learn to think a little bit differently. Entrepreneurs think differently. So the first thing I recommend is have a business plan. And why a business plan? Well, it's a really good way to organize your thoughts. And a good business plan will tell you what you intend to do, how you're going to do it, why your idea is better than anybody who's out there right now, and how much money is your business going to make. The easiest way to get started with a business plan is download a template. You can go to our SCORE website, losangeles.score.org, and we have a free template that you can download. And with a template, you'll see all the questions you need to answer, and it's a good way to start writing your plan. And then if you'd like some more help, we have a really good low-cost business plan workshop you can take, and you can go get your questions answered, and you can get more insight to write the business plan. And finally, meet with somebody to review your business plan. It can be somebody from SCORE, it can be that friend or relative I talked about, but that's the way to write a business plan. Now, there are lots of other sources out there for templates, and there are actually a large number of books on how to write a business plan that you can check out at your library. Here's just a couple of other places where you can get business plans. Now, some of these people charge to write a business plan for you, and I strongly recommend against that. You need to write the plan so that you know what's in the plan and you know the insights of what's in there. There are really two types of business plans. There's a lean business plan and a formal business plan. The lean business plan is a proof of concept. It's a quick and dirty way to do a business plan, but it covers all the basics pretty quickly. A formal business plan, there's a set format to write it. To do a really good job, it takes quite a bit of time. And really, this type of plan is only necessary when you're getting ready to borrow money from somebody. That's when the formal plan is usually asked for. So let's talk about the lean plan. What you do with a lean plan is look at the top 3 problems you're going to solve for your customer. And then you come up with what's your unique value proposition? What makes your product or service better than anything else that's out there? What are the top 3 features of your business? How are you going to get to the customers? Are you going to sell retail? Are you going to sell wholesale? Are you going to sell online? How are you going to do, what's your path to customers? And then you need to look at your cost structure and revenue streams. How much do the raw materials cost for your product? How much does it cost to build your product? What kind of equipment do you need to do it? And then on the other side of the story is how much money are you going to make? How many products are you going to be able to sell? How much income does that provide? And you need to make sure that the income covers the cost structure and then there's some profit left over. You need to look at key metrics. What's something that you can measure weekly or monthly to know that your business is headed in the right direction? And again, you need to look at that unfair advantage. What makes you different and better than anybody else? Now, with a lean plan, you can lay out all these questions either on a whiteboard or a big sheet of paper and fill this in and answer these questions. And now you have a really good starting point for your plan, and it's a good way to analyze your business. There are really about 4 different ways to get into business. You can start a brand new business, and the advantages of that are it's a clean sheet of paper. You're not hampered by a previous image. You can sell a different kind of product that's never been sold before. You can pick your own logo. You can pick your location. You can pick the people that you use for suppliers. So it gives you a lot of freedom. The disadvantage of starting a business like this is you don't have an existing customer base to build on. It may be a bigger risk than buying an existing business because you're not really sure what kind of income it's going to generate, how long it's going to take you to get customers, how much it's going to cost you to get customers. So you have to evaluate the advantages and the disadvantages. A second way to get into business is to buy a business. The biggest disadvantage to start with is it generally costs you more money to buy an existing business, so that could be a problem. The advantages are you gain an established customer base. You'll have some records to review. You can look at how much the business is selling, what the income is. With a track record, it may be easier to get some financing, or you may be able to talk the business owner into helping you finance the business. So those are the advantages. The disadvantages are there can be hidden problems. There can be a lawsuit that hasn't been filed yet. The business inventory could be obsolete. It'll be carried on the books at its cost, but it may not be worth anywhere near that. Employees of the former owner may or may not want to work for you. So you got to look at that. And there's no guarantee that success will continue under your ownership. A third way to get into business, and I happen to think this is really a good one, is work for somebody for a while, preferably as the manager of their business, and then find a business where the owner wants to sell out. That's what happened to my employees. They bought my business. I've had several clients do this. So it's a great way to get into business. The advantage is you get to learn the industry while you're getting paid. It gives you firsthand knowledge of how the business operates. It's really allowing you to try before you buy. If you have a good relationship with the owner, chances are he'll help you finance it, and chances are he'll make reaching a deal much easier. The disadvantages are these situations are hard to find, and the timing has to be just right. The fourth way to get into business is buy a franchise. They have a higher level of success. We think starting a business, your odds are 50-50. It's pretty much proven that buying a good franchise, your odds of success are 70-30. So it improves your chances of success. The franchisor will help you find a location. They'll share knowledge with you of how the business works. They'll help you set up. They'll help you produce your product. The disadvantages, though, is you have to pay an upfront fee to buy a franchise, and then there's going to be an ongoing fee on your revenues. And the other thing is you can't really be creative. You have to follow the franchise formula. If you're thinking about a franchise, I really suggest you go find some owners and talk to them and ask them about their expertise and their dealings in the business and what they think about the franchise. The first thing you ought to do when you go into business is prove your concept, especially if you have a brand new concept. A really interesting story is Zappos shoes. when Nick and Tony started this business, they told people that they were going to sell shoes online. And everybody told them they were crazy. You can't sell shoes online. People want to go into the store. They want to try the shoes on. They want to see how they feel. They're never going to buy them online. So what they did was they set up a little website. Nick went to downtown Las Vegas to a shoe store and took pictures of a bunch of the different shoes. They put them up on the website. They did a little bit of advertising, and within a week, they had 20 or 30 orders. So they quickly shut down the website. They proved their concept. They proved indeed you can sell shoes online. They went down to the retail store, bought the shoes retail, and shipped them to their customer. So it cost them a few bucks, but what a great experiment, and it proved their concept. And you can see they've gone on to really great things since then. Thinking like an entrepreneur, you need to cover all the bases. And these are what we consider the bases. First thing that we recommend is you assemble an advisor team, find that mentor that I talked about, finding an accountant or a bookkeeper to help you with the numbers, at least at tax time. You're going to need insurance in business, so find a business insurance agent. Your homeowner agent probably is not the right guy. And somewhere along the line, you're going to need to find a lawyer, and we recommend you find a banker. We recommend you go to a small business bank where you'll have a chance of being known. The way you find these people, I think the best way is ask for referrals from people that you know, from business owners, and then check out 2 or 3. Don't just take the first one that comes along. Another important thing you're going to need to do is manage your credit. It's really important that you know what your FICO score is, and the higher you can get your FICO score, the better chances you are of getting the financing that you'll need to be in business. You can check your credit report annually, and right now during the pandemic, I think you can even check it monthly. Good credit gives you lower interest rates, and good credit will help you with your suppliers. They can give you dating, which is the same as borrowing money. Here are the 5 C's of credit. Anybody loaning money, this is what they look at. They look at your character. They want to feel that you're honest and that you're going to pay them back. They look at your cash flow. Are you going to be able to repay the loan out of the money that your business is generating? They look at capital. How much money have you invested in the business? And if you haven't invested any money in the business, why should they? They look at the condition of your business. Is it growing? Is it fading? They're concerned about that. And they look at collateral. What can you put up to guarantee the loan? The easiest business loan to get is when you buy a building, because the building becomes great collateral for the lending institution. These are the most likely funds for a new business starting out. It's your savings, equity in any property that you have. At SCORE, we like to call and say FFF, that's friends, family, and fools. When you're starting a business, you need to be frugal. You don't need to buy every piece of equipment new. There's tons of good used equipment out there. There's also other things that you can do, and we call it bootstrapping. They're free things to help you with business. You can lease instead of buy. There's all kinds of ways to keep that cost down when you're going into business. And finally, we don't recommend it, but lots of small businesses start using credit card financing. The interest rate that you pay is a killer, though, so we really recommend you be careful if you do that. The least likely sources of funds for a new business are bank and SBA loans. They won't look at you for a loan until you've been in business for at least 3 years and can show them profit and loss statements for the 3 years that show your business is growing and generating funds and that there are profits in there that would be needed to pay back the loan. Venture capital or angel investors are looking for really special situations, and they want to also see a track record. They want to see you're growing. They want to see your idea is really interesting, and they're looking for unique situations. Government grants really don't exist. It's an urban myth. You can try crowdfunding. There's Kickstarter or Indiegogo. You got to be a little bit careful, though, because there are people that hang around on these websites and look for new ideas, and they steal them. So you got to be careful of that. Also, there's tricks to raising money on these websites. So you need to learn some of them before you start. And you really need kind of a unique idea to get started using these websites. A coffee shop or a little restaurant generally can't get enough interest to raise the funds that they need. Also, here are a few other places that loan money to small businesses. The Opportunity Fund, JFL, PACE is another resource partner of SCORE or of the SBA. They had loans, and the CDC, another resource partner of the SBA, loans money. When you get started in business, you have to look at your legal structure. And the most common ones are a sole proprietor, a partnership, a corporation. And there's 3 types of corporation. There's the LLC, the C Corp, and the S Corp. This chart is a little bit hard to read, but I'll go through it a little bit and we can talk about it. Sole proprietors are about how 70% of small businesses start. It's the easiest to do. The requirements are the least. The major disadvantage of a sole proprietor is that as the owner, you're responsible for all the business debts. And as the owner, if anything goes wrong with the business and you get sued, they're really suing you. It's not a total separate legal entity. Now, you can handle some of the liability problem by buying insurance, and liability insurance generally is not real expensive, so it's something to look at. The second most common, or the second easiest way to get into business if you have a partner, is a partnership. It's very similar to a sole proprietor, but you have more than one person. The LLC is probably the next most common structure. We see lots of people using it today. As an LLC, you have some liability protection. So that's the biggest advantage. The disadvantages are, first of all, it costs you some money to set up an LLC. You'll probably need a lawyer or at least LegalZoom.com. Once you have it set up, the state of California charges you $800 a year, whether you make a nickel or not. So if you're going to create an LLC, don't do it before you're ready to do business, because you'll have that $800 a year that you pay whether you have any income or not. Probably the second most common corporation is an S corporation. And it, again, gives you that legal protection, but The disadvantage, again, is you pay the state of California $800. The income in all of these businesses, the sole proprietor, partnership, LLC, and the S Corp, flows through to your personal income tax statement. So you don't have to create a separate income tax statement. So that's very easy to do. The third and last corporation that I'll talk about is a C Corp, and it actually is a total legal person. It has it's a legal person. It has to do its own income taxes. You have to have a board meeting every year. You have to have a stockholders meeting. You do have liability protection, but you also have to pay the state of California the $800 a year. Now, one thing, if you start a business as a sole proprietor and you use your name that's on your driver's license, you don't have to do anything else. But if you use any other name, and I've given some examples here, my nickname or a name of a company that I came up with, then you need to get a DBA. DBA stands for Doing Business As. And it's also called a fictitious business name. So you need to get that. It's really relatively simple, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. The other thing, if you name your sole proprietor or your partnership something, I recommend you see if you can find a website that you can name the same thing. If I had a company named Bob Pens and my website was named Bob Pens, you can see how that would be really useful. To get a DBA, here's what you do in LA County. Here's a website that you go to. And once you get to that website, you can type in the name that you want, and the website will do a search for you to see if the name is already taken. If the name isn't taken, now you're ready to go. On that same website is a form that you fill out, so you can type in the name and all the other information they ask for. And during the pandemic, you can't go into any offices and take this in. So what you need to do is print the form out, then you need to get it notarized, and then you submit the form. And I think the fee is about $30 on the form, so it's not expensive to submit it. And then when you get that name, you need to go to a local newspaper and advertise it. Now, don't go to the LA Times unless you really want your name broadcast all over, because they're going to want over $300 to do a DBA advertising for you. Go to a local newspaper in your area, and most of them will do it in the $50 range. So for less than $100, you can get a DBA. Now, if you don't want to mess with any of this, go to LegalZoom.com, and I think the going rate for them to do it for you now is about $160. I really recommend that once you get started, you look at business insurance. I've already talked about the liability insurance, and even though I was a corporation in my business, I still always bought liability insurance. The next thing you probably want to look at is property insurance, especially if you've got any expensive machinery to build your product. You want a little insurance on that. If you use a motor vehicle anywhere in the business, you got to make sure you got insurance on that. And then a couple of others to think about are employee health insurance. These are not required, and it's expensive, but it's really a great benefit for an employee. So it helps you hire good employees. And you can also buy business interruption insurance. If there's a fire or if something happens and your business has to stop for a while, you can get some relief from that. But you have to be very careful of the policy you buy. And the more comprehensive it is, the more expensive it is. There's a lot of people now that wish they'd left in pandemic coverage in their business interruption insurance. When you get insurance, we recommend you get a proposal from 2 or 3 different insurance agents and figure out the best one to take. When you go into business, you may have some intellectual property that you want to protect. SCORE does a really great workshop on intellectual property, and they have a great chart in the workshop that talks about all the different types. And because they didn't copyright it, I can show you that chart. But before I go there, a great place to start is the U.S. Patent Office government website. There's all kinds of good information on there about patents and other intellectual protection. So I recommend that as a place to start. So here are the ways that you can protect your intellectual property. The first one is a patent. Generally, patents are used to cover mechanical devices that are unique. A patent will last for about 20 years. They're fairly difficult to obtain. You generally need to hire a patent attorney to do it. You'll need some detailed drawings, and then the cost ranges between $10,000 and $25,000. Now, there is a great patent department at the Central Library, and that's a good place if you're thinking about getting a patent. Go down and talk to the librarian there who specializes in patents, and she might even help you do a patent search to see if anybody else has already come up with your idea. So that's a great place to start. A trade secret is the way you can protect, like formulas for drinks or food or anything else that you can protect with a secret. The lifetime on a trade secret's indefinite. It's easy to obtain. It doesn't cost you anything. It's harder to maintain your secret. Probably the most successful trade secret is the formula for Coca-Cola. That's well over 100 years old. A copyright is something that you use to protect expression. It can be a poem, a book, a movie script, a stage play. Copyrights last for 75 to 100 years. They're relatively inexpensive to register, and the cost is like $200 to $500. Mask work is very specialized, and it relates to printed circuit boards. And a trademark is what you use to protect your company logo. If you have a service, it protects the symbols you use on your trucks. You can even trademark a sound. The Paramount Lion's roar is a trademark sound. So here are the things you need to make sure you have. A DBA from the state of California if you're a sole proprietor or a partnership. An EIN from the Social Security Administration. An EIN is basically a Social Security number for your business. You want to get that so that you protect your Social Security number. And when you go and sign up for a business bank account, they're going to ask you for it. You need a sales and use permit in California if you're going to sell anything retail, because you have to collect sales tax on the item and then pay the sales tax to the state. And we strongly recommend you get a business bank account in the name of your business so that you can keep your personal funds and your business funds totally separate. We always get asked a lot of questions on licenses and permits. The calgold.ca.gov is a great website to start with. It'll give you a list of things that you need to think about and look at. And it also tells you where to get these things. So it's really a great website. You're going to be a tax collector for your business. So you're going to have to pay federal tax, state tax. If you have employees, you're going to have to pay payroll taxes. And if you have property in Los Angeles County, I think over $100,000, you're going to have to pay some property tax. So, Mr. Mader, you're up next.
Good. Next slide. I'm just going to kind of go through these quickly. We want to leave some time at the end for question and answer. So I may ignore a slide or two. Marketing is defining the right message about your product or service, making sure you're speaking to the right customer, and you want to make sure you're doing it at the right time. So marketing is not easy, but if you look at it from that standpoint, getting the right message about your product or service to the right customer at the right time, you want to build in your marketing, you want to be able to build trust and understanding with potential customers, and that will be successful marketing. Next slide. Also, you want to be targeting the right person that makes the buying decision. You want to really think about who's going to make the buying decision and what they will take into account. A good example would be if you've got a dog, you want to make sure that, or if you have products that you are for dogs, you want to make sure that you really market your ideas to the owner of the dog who will make that buying decision, not the dog. Next slide. Looking at marketing, you also want to make sure you position yourself correctly, whether you have a mass market product like McDonald's. It's inexpensive. They're all over the place. Most people like what they have. It's a mass market. A niche market would be something like sushi. Not everybody likes sushi. It's expensive and it's a little harder to find. So with your product or service, look and see what kind of market it is. Is it for everybody or is it for a small niche group? Next slide. In hiring workers, at some point you want to do that, and I just was bring a couple of issues about it. Be careful about contract workers. Some new businesses try to use contract workers instead of employees, and you got to be careful there. The state of California is kind of tough on that. If you're interested in that subject, send me an email, and I'd be glad to send you what I wrote about the things that the IRS and the EDD, this California Employment Development Department, looks at to decide whether a worker is an employee or a contract worker. And of course, you want to make sure that you hire the best person for the position. You want to write a job description. You want to consider many people as opposed to just hiring a friend that says, hey, I'll help you. It's possible it could turn out to you lose the friend and the work that they do. So take some time to think about that. When you get ready for an employee, write a job description and then consider many people. Next slide. Managing your business. These are the three relationships that you really always need to be thinking about. The management of the relationship with your suppliers, the people that sell you things and services. You want to make sure that you manage the relationship with your customers, keeping clear communication about the expectations, the quality, the payments, and the service, making sure that's very clear. And with employees, you want to be manage those well by training them, rewarding them, and encouraging. That's really what business is all about, those relationships. Next slide. And you will end up with disputes from time to time, but we think the best way to avoid those disputes is by having good policies in your business and good training of your employees to avoid those disputes. And we always recommend making sure that you specify mediation and arbitration because it's much cheaper to do that than to go to court. Mediation is just getting people back together and talking about it, and that's usually what works. But you don't want it to get to the point of being a lawsuit. So you manage those disputes by having good training and good policies in your business. Next slide. Bookkeeping is important. I think I mentioned that earlier. You want to make sure that you are keeping good records so that you can pay your taxes and that you can also have good information about making decisions. So it's an important function in every business, and either you have to learn to do it yourself or you have to hire a bookkeeper, an accountant to do it. But you can't put it off and say, I'll do that next year. Next slide. This is a simple bookkeeping system. You can see on the left, you would write down every time you get money from a customer, and on the right, you write down whenever you get expenses. And you make one of these for each month of the year. And at the end of the year, you have 12 of them. And it's a real simple profit and loss statement for the month, and then 12 of them would make it for the year. Next slide. You add those up, and you can actually put them directly on the Schedule C as part of a tax return. On line 1 would be all the income from the whole year. On line 28 would be all the expenses. And on line 31 would be the profit. And then that number goes on to your 1040. Next slide. Be careful when you do taxes, making sure you don't take taking deductions from your income that are not legal. Like sometimes people take extra expenses when they work at home or operate their business from home, or when they're using their automobile, or when they travel and entertain. So just be careful when you are doing those expenses that they're actually legitimate, because that's what the kinds of things that the IRS looks at when they're going to do an audit. Next slide. Remember I talked to you earlier about Jeff Bezos' great idea. Here's another one. This is a great idea for success in business. This person said it's important to add more value to your product or service than you charge. In other words, you don't necessarily lose money on it, but you want to make sure that you're giving a value to the customer which exceeds what you're charging. If you focus on the value that you give to the customer, again, that's a subjective thing, but you want to make sure that your customer feels like they're getting value from your product or service, and worry a little less about the profits. Who said that? And who said be sure your product and service generates more value than you charge for it? Next slide. It's actually Satya Nadella. He's the chairman of Microsoft, and he said that the secret to business and the secret to success is creating more value than you charge for your product or service. And actually, he brought more value to Microsoft than Bill Gates, Paul Allen, or Steve Ballmer combined. And he's done that in 3 or 4 years. A great person to watch. Next slide. This is the SCORE LA website, and you can see there's 3 elements to it. There's the mentoring, and we do mentoring for people that start a business or are in business. And the mentoring, you can click on that and you can look at all the mentors in LA County. There's about 100 of us. And you can see what their skills are. You can see their picture, and you can see what part of town they're in. So you can pick a mentor that works for you. The middle box is all about our workshops, and we do almost a workshop a day right now. Currently, they're all online, but they are live and they are interactive. So you'll be able to find a workshop that will give you the information about business or the skills in business that you need. And it's a great way to learn, but it's also a great way to network with other people that are doing what you're doing. And then on the right side, you'll see the template for all the tools and all the resources that are on our website. And dig down in there, because you'll find a lot of stuff that will be really good. And our website is free. The only service that we charge for is some of the workshops. The mentoring is all free, and the website is all free. And it's just a matter of getting in there and helping yourself. Next slide. These are some of the workshops that we present. Starting a business, that's what we're talking about today. But we also do some on franchising. We do a lot on marketing, promoting your business. We also do it on social media. And as Bob mentioned earlier, there's one on creating a successful business plan. And they're all at losangeles.score.org. Next slide. If you have any questions, we will take some questions, and you probably have put them in the box already. But if you have questions later, or you want more information about SCORE, you can contact either Bob or I. And I'm dick.mater@scorevolunteer.org, and it's bob.o'brien@scorevolunteer.org. And we're able to either answer your questions or help you find the right workshop that you're looking for, or helping to find the right mentor. We would be honored to be a mentor to you, but sometimes if you're looking for certain things, we would recommend that you talk to a mentor who has the skills and the education and the experience that you need. Thanks for attending, and we'll entertain the questions that you've sent in.
So there are a few questions that came in. First, I'll begin with the two-part question. Will a business affect my FICO score, or do I have to have a separate FICO score as a business owner?
I'll let Bob take that one. You talk about FICO.
The FICO score is your score. Businesses have other ratings, but the FICO score is the business owner's personal score. And if anybody's going to loan your business money, they're going to look at you as the owner and look at your personal score. And chances are they're going to make you sign a personal guarantee for the loan. So your personal score is what's really important here.
Okay, great. Thank you. And another question, can we use the same website for logos as well?
I don't understand that question.
I think they're trying to figure out whether their logo's already been taken. I think what I would do if I had a logo is I would try and research it online. Offhand, I don't know of any websites you can go to and that'll actually look at your logo and see if anybody else has it. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. And then there's another question that came in. It said, I heard that you can lease a company car for your business, and at a yearly cost of the lease can be put into your taxes at the end of the year. Is that true? And how does that work?
It is true that you can lease a car and deduct the cost of the lease from your business. However, it's important, the IRS, if you get audited, would look at whether you were using that same car for personal use or whether you had another car that you use for personal use. If you only had one car, they know that you were driving it for personal use as well. So you can't deduct the entire use. And they would also probably look at what your business is and why you felt you needed that car to operate your business. If there's a legitimate reason why you need that car to go visit clients, to travel and do selling, then that's a legitimate reason. But just to have the car and deduct it, you're going to have to defend that when it comes time to talk to the IRS.
You know, a company might be better off just charging mileage, which I think is over 50 cents a mile right now, and that could be easily defendable.
Yes, keeping a diary of the mileage that you do, and then putting it 50 cents a mile. That's a better and more practical and more defendable tactic on your taxes.
Okay, and another question came in from the same person that said great content. So that's some great positive feedback. Thank you. And then he asked a question, have you a Twitter or links to access and know more about these topics? So it sounds like they want to know if you have a Twitter account.
We don't personally have a Twitter account, but Score Los Angeles.score.org does. So check on that.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, as far as I know, there aren't any more questions that are coming in. Special thanks to Dick Mader and Bob O'Brien for sharing this presentation. It has been extremely informative. And yeah, again, somebody came in and said, thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, they share their information, or you can email us at LAPL with any questions about this program.